And that's why she is a badass.
What were you talking about when you went to George Washington's place?
Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon. You were saying that George Washington gave the slaves to his wife, or was trying to free her slaves too? She had some power. No, she didn't have power at the time.
In his will,
George Washington.
Yep. So when I visited my sister, we spent a day at Mount Vernon, which was super awesome, and went into Mount Vernon, into the house, and you're touching the same banister that he held onto. You get to go see the room where he died.
And that his wife slid down.
His teeth were made out of it.
Exactly. You can see teeth.
You go visit the tomb where he is. You can see his burial site. Anyway, what was the point? Oh, so he was negotiating, and he put in his will when he died that all of his slaves had to be freed. They had 323 slaves on Mount Vernon property. He had 4 or 5 different farms.
300?
Wow.
He freed all of his. He owned 158 of them. He wanted them legally freed. So he did that. Kind of gangster.
But he did it in 1799, 60 years before the Civil War.
How does anybody know about this? Weren't they arguing critical race theory back then?
You can still read his will.
Yeah.
And because she came from wealth and she brought over 160 or 70 slaves from her father, he was negotiating. He didn't have the legal right to free those slaves, but he was negotiating and trying to, because a lot of the slaves had intermarried, and he thought that they all deserved to live free. After he was dead. Not while he was dead.
Again,
after.
60 years. No. Yeah, he needed soup. And by the way, these sheets need to be changed. I'm old and sick. Let's go.
When I die, then you're free. How about that?
Speaking of critical race, so critical race, someone wrote a bill today that said these tech companies can no longer do apps that have algorithms.
Wait.
They can't write. They can't write apps that have algorithms in it, because that's all they think is bad. That's what an app does. The whole thing is an algorithm, and they said they're going to outlaw algorithms. There was a bill presented, and I was like, "Can we get people in Congress fucking just under 70? You moron! Like grandma,
get rid of that. Would be grandma. Just get rid of the that we don't want them no more."
But look it up. There was a bill. They're presenting.
I was going to say there's something I learned by going to Mount Vernon. That's why I love doing stuff like that. I highly recommend it. Their gift shop is awesome too.
Don't do it like Sarah Palin. Do it.
No, really do it. He came out of retirement to be president. They had to talk him into it. He wanted to go home, and he said always in his heart he was home. He was a farmer.
George Washington, right?
He's a farmer, and he wanted to be home with his wife and who he loved and be on his farm. And so they talked him into it for the country.
Right.
And
so he did the right thing.
And yes, and then the people were all very afraid of a monarchy again, which is what they had just escaped. And so one of the selling points about him was that he was unable to have children. He had no biological children of his own. His wife had some from her first marriage. Her husband died.
That we know of.
Exactly.
Right.
Funny thing about that, he was still a dude because a letter that they have
panties by the cherry tree.
The letters that they have from him. I talked to this guide lady there because I always like to get what people know, and this was her shit, man. She said he's still a man because he wrote letters to people and would comment that obviously it was a problem with his wife, not with him, because. But he came out of retirement.
I'm telling you, like a rock.
People trusted him.
Listen. This thing crosses the Delaware, if you know what I'm talking about. Boom.
No.
From here. From Philly to Delaware.
He said,
it's obvious
he said, I'm even on $1. Know what I'm saying? No, not yet.
No, hey, I know what happened when I was a kid. I can still swing an axe, if you know what I'm saying.
I got a lot of wood.
And I cannot tell a lie. Boom.
No. What is wrong with you two?
George Washington talking about his penis.
So at the end of the 8 years, although people were so terrified of a monarchy, he polled very highly back then.
I bet he did.
Because of being a general.
Very highly. Because it's not my fault I don't have kids.
He does 2 terms.
I'm polling huge.
And he does 2 terms.
He's Italian.
And
babies come out of here, not here.
They want him to stay.
He's Italian.
I'm getting this out. And they want him to stay and continue his presidency. And he said no and went home. 8 years. That's the deal. I'm going home. And the people wanted him to stay.
That was the last good president we ever had.
Yeah, that was the last. Yeah, the guy who really gave a shit about the country and did what he said.
I liked Lincoln. Right. And I liked FDR.
Lincoln was good. Lincoln had a lot of wisdom. I think his depression, I think smart people get depressed because they look around and they go, oh my God, there's a lot of morons.
But wasn't he just taking like lead pills?
Yeah,
like for something
there was that might have been part of it. Like he wasn't taking lead pills, but I mean he licked banisters. He licked painted banisters and
his potato trees kind of these chips.
Lincoln is also Italian. Hey, free these slaves. What are you doing? Here's what's gonna happen. You don't want to see what's gonna happen. The Union Army. You know what that means? We're together. Boom. We're coming down.
And they're not.
Except
down to the micron.
All the same.
They're just. If I can get a chain over here, pull it over here.
How many is that? 9 feet? Hey, if I can pull it.
Just count 9? Yeah. Yep.
What are you pulling my chain? Hey!
And we're back.
Which George Washington said many times to the Continental Army.
I saw it
Why
coming.
they were getting smallpox vaccinations.
I knew it. That's why I said, and we're back. I know your brain so
all roads
well.
lead back to George Washington's penis.